My dad accidentally sent me a voice message meant for my uncle. I could hear a barbecue in the background. He said, between us, "I wish Nolan never happened." Then he laughed. I sat in my car and played it 3 times. I never called home again. My name is Nolan. I'm 32, and I need to tell you something that changed my entire life in under 9 seconds. That's how long the voice message was. 9 seconds. I've timed it. I've played it so many times I could recite it in my sleep, and honestly, some nights I do. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me give you the backstory so this makes sense. I grew up in Clarksville, Tennessee, about 45 minutes north of Nashville. Nice enough town. Good people. Friday night football, church on Sundays, the whole deal. My dad, Rick, was a contractor who ran his own small business doing residential remodeling. My mom, Diane, worked part-time at a dental office and was the kind of woman who always had dinner on the table by 6 and a glass of sweet tea in her hand by 6:15. They were good parents. Or at least, I thought they were. I have one brother. His name is Garrett. He's 3 years older than me. And growing up, Garrett was the sun and I was whatever rock happened to be orbiting nearby. He was the quarterback. He was the homecoming king. He was the kid whose school photos got framed and hung in the hallway while mine sat in a drawer because my mom hadn't gotten around to buying a frame yet. For 3 years, apparently. He got the full ride to the University of Tennessee while I got a handshake and a good luck out there, bud, when I left for community college. Look, I'm not saying my parents didn't love me. They showed up. They packed lunches. They signed permission slips. But there was always this invisible line between how they treated Garrett and how they treated me, and I spent most of my 20s pretending I couldn't see it. I remember one Christmas when I was maybe 14. Garrett got a brand new laptop for school. Top of the line. My dad made this big production of it. Had him open it last, filmed the whole thing on his camcorder. I got a gift card to GameStop and a sweater that was a size too big. My mom said, "You're still growing into it." Like she was doing me a favor by buying the wrong size. I wore that sweater exactly once, to be polite, and then it lived in the back of my closet until we moved. But I didn't say anything. I smiled and said thank you and played my new video game in my room while Garrett set up his laptop at the kitchen table and my dad hovered over his shoulder like a proud engineer watching a rocket launch. Garrett was the one they talked about at family gatherings. Garrett was the one whose football highlights my dad kept on a loop during Thanksgiving. Garrett was the one who got a car for his 16th birthday. I got a used bike and a card that said, "Pedal toward your dreams," which I'm pretty sure my mom grabbed from the clearance rack at Dollar General. And honestly, I didn't complain. That wasn't my style. I figured I'd just work harder and eventually they'd notice. I went to community college, got my associate's degree in business, then transferred to Austin Peay State to finish my bachelor's. Paid for most of it myself with student loans and a part-time gig at a hardware store. Meanwhile, Garrett was living it up in Knoxville, getting his tuition covered, coming home with stories about tailgates and sorority formals while I was stocking shelves and eating ramen 4 nights a week. But I didn't resent him for it. Not really. Garrett wasn't a bad brother. He was just oblivious. He floated through life on a cloud of golden child privilege and never once looked down to see if I was drowning. After college, I moved to Nashville. Got a job at a logistics company doing operations work. Nothing glamorous, but I was good at it. Real good. Within 2 years, I'd been promoted twice and was managing a team of 12. I found a little apartment in East Nashville, started dating a girl named Brooke who worked at a music publishing company downtown, and for the first time in my life, things felt like they were clicking. But here's the thing about being the overlooked kid. You build your whole identity around proving you're worth something. And even when you start succeeding, there's this little voice in the back of your head that says it's not enough. That voice sounded a lot like my dad. See, Rick was the kind of father who showed love through proximity, but never through words. He'd be in the room, but he wouldn't be present. I'd call home every Sunday, tell him about my promotion, about the new apartment, about Brooke, and he'd say, "That's great, bud," in the exact same tone he used when I told him I liked the new mulch he put down in the front yard. Just flat. No follow-up questions. No pride in his voice. Meanwhile, I'd overhear him on the phone with his brother, my Uncle Dale, bragging about Garrett's new truck or Garrett's engagement to his college girlfriend, Chelsea, like Garrett had just been nominated for a Nobel Prize for buying a Ford F-150. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself that some dads just aren't good with words. I told myself a lot of things because the alternative was admitting that my own father didn't see me the way I needed him to, and I wasn't ready for that. Then came the barbecue. Well, not the barbecue itself. I wasn't there. That's kind of the whole point. It was a Saturday in late June. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot of a Kroger in Nashville. Brooke had sent me a grocery list for a dinner party we were hosting that night, and I was about to head inside when my phone buzzed. It was a voice message from my dad. I remember thinking it was weird because my dad never sent voice messages. He was a call and talk for 90 seconds then say all right then and hang up kind of guy. I hit play. The first thing I heard was noise. Laughter, country music playing in the background, the unmistakable sound of someone flipping meat on a grill. A barbecue. Then my dad's voice, casual and loose like he'd had a couple of beers, saying, "Between us, I wish Nolan never happened." And then he laughed. Not a big laugh. Not a cruel cackle. Just a chuckle. Like he'd made a joke about the weather. 9 seconds. That's all it was. I sat there. The grocery list was still on my screen underneath the voice message notification. Brooke wanted cherry tomatoes and fresh basil. I remember that detail because my brain was trying to hold on to something normal while the rest of me was falling apart. I played it again. Then a third time. Between us, I wish Nolan never happened. He meant to send that to Uncle Dale. I'm sure of it. They were at some family barbecue, probably at Dale's place out in Springfield, and my dad accidentally tapped my name instead of Dale's. A pocket dial of the soul, if you will. I sat in that car for almost 30 minutes. The engine was off. The windows were up. It was 90-something degrees outside, and the car was turning into a sauna, and I didn't move. I just kept staring at my phone like it was going to take it back. Like my dad's voice was going to come through again and say, "Just kidding, bud. You know I love you." It didn't. I never went inside the Kroger. I drove home, told Brooke I wasn't feeling well, and spent the rest of the night in our bedroom pretending to sleep while she hosted the dinner party alone. She knew something was wrong. Brooke always knew, but she also knew when not to push, and that night, she let me be. I didn't call home that Sunday, or the Sunday after that, or the one after that. I never called home again. The first 2 weeks after that voice message were the hardest. I'd wake up in the morning, and for about 3 seconds, everything was fine. Then it would hit me like a truck. Between us, I wish Nolan never happened. Every single morning. Like an alarm clock made of heartbreak. Brooke could tell something had shifted. I wasn't the same guy. I was quieter, shorter with my responses, distracted during conversations. She'd ask me how my day was, and I'd say fine, in a tone that clearly meant it wasn't fine. And she'd look at me with those concerned brown eyes, and I'd feel guilty for shutting her out, but I couldn't bring myself to say the words. How do you tell your girlfriend that your dad wishes you didn't exist? It sounds like something out of a bad movie. Except it was my life. About 3 weeks in, my mom called. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message saying she hadn't heard from me in a while and wanted to make sure I was okay. Her voice was warm and normal, which somehow made it worse. I wondered if she knew. I wondered if my dad had said things like that before, at other barbecues, at other dinners, during other conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. I wondered how long my own father had been wishing I hadn't been born while my mother passed me the mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving and told me I looked thin. Garrett texted me around the same time. "Hey man, you coming to the 4th of July thing at Mom and Dad's? Chelsea's making her potato salad. It's actually good this year, LOL." I stared at that text for a long time. Classic Garrett. Casually assuming I'd show up. Casually assuming everything was fine. Casually not noticing that our father had just nuked my entire sense of belonging with a 9-second voice message he didn't even mean to send me. I didn't reply. By July, the silence had apparently become loud enough for my family to notice. My mom called again. Then she started texting. "Nolan, please call me back. Nolan, are you okay? Dad and I are worried." Dad's worried. That one almost made me laugh. The man who wished I never happened is worried. What was he worried about exactly? That I might actually start existing harder out of spite? Then my dad called. Once. I watched his name light up on my phone screen, and I felt my whole chest go tight. I didn't answer. He didn't leave a voicemail. Probably didn't want to risk accidentally telling me how he really felt again. Brooke finally confronted me on a Thursday night in mid-July. We were sitting on the couch, some show playing on the television that neither of us was watching, and she muted it and turned to me and said, "Nolan, I love you, but something is really wrong, and you need to tell me what it is, or I can't help you." So I told her. I pulled up the voice message, handed her my phone, and watched her face while she listened. She played it twice, just like I had. Then she set the phone down on the coffee table very carefully, like it might explode, and she looked at me and said, "I'm going to need you to say something before I throw this phone through the wall." I told her everything. The years of being second best. The bike versus the car. The way my dad's voice went flat every time I told him something good about my life. The way Garrett got celebrated for breathing while I got a pat on the head for graduating college. I laid out the whole pathetic tapestry of being the unfavorite son, and by the time I was done, Brooke was crying and I wasn't, which tells you something about how numb I'd become. She held my hand and said, "You deserve so much better than this. You know that, right?" And the thing is, I didn't know that. Not really. Not deep down. Because when your own father says he wishes you never happened, it confirms every insecurity you've ever had. Every time I wondered why I wasn't good enough. Every time I told myself I was imagining things. Every time I made excuses for why Dad seemed more interested in Garrett's weekend plans than my career milestones. That voice message proved all of it true. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't sensitive. I was just unwanted. August came and the family pressure ramped up. My mom started calling Brooke directly, which I hadn't anticipated. Brooke handled it like a champ. She told my mom I was going through some things and needed space, and my mom, to her credit, backed off for a little while. But then Garrett showed up. He drove down to Nashville on a Saturday morning, unannounced, and knocked on our apartment door at 9 in the morning like he was delivering a subpoena. I opened the door in sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt, and there he was, 6'2", clean-shaven, wearing a polo shirt like he was headed to a country club. "Dude, what is going on with you?" he said before I could even say hello. "Mom is losing her mind. Dad's pretending he's not worried, but he's been weird for weeks. You're ghosting everyone. Talk to me." I almost did. I almost pulled up the voice message right there in the doorway and played it for him. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the fact that Garrett had never once in his life had to question whether our parents wanted him, and I didn't feel like watching him fumble through a response that would inevitably minimize what I was feeling. Or maybe I just didn't trust that he wouldn't go straight back to my dad and give him a heads up, so Rick could start rehearsing his excuses. "I'm fine, Garrett," I said. "I'm just busy with work." He looked at me like I'd told him the earth was flat. "You're not fine. You look like you haven't slept in a month." "I appreciate you coming down," I said, already closing the door. "But I need some space right now." He stood on the porch for a minute. I could see his shadow through the frosted glass. Then he left. I watched his truck pull out of the driveway, and I sat down on the kitchen floor and put my head in my hands, and that was the closest I came to crying through the whole thing. The breaking point, the real one, came in September. My mom sent me a group text that included Garrett, Chelsea, my dad, and Uncle Dale. It was a photo of the whole family at Dale's lake house. Everyone was smiling. My dad had his arm around Garrett. There was a banner in the background that said Happy Labor Day in red, white, and blue letters. My mom's caption read, "Wish you were here, Nolan. We missed you." I zoomed in on my dad's face. He was grinning, full teeth, no tension, no sign of a man who was losing sleep over his estranged son. He looked like a guy who was having a great time at a barbecue, which, given recent history, tracked perfectly. I saved the photo. Then I screenshot the voice message. Then I opened a notes app and wrote 2 words, "Move on." That night, I told Brooke I was done. Not done with her. Done with them. Done waiting for my dad to become someone he wasn't. Done performing the role of the grateful second son who pretends the crumbs from the table are a full meal. Done hoping that if I just worked a little harder, achieved a little more, called a little more often, maybe one day Rick would look at me the way he looked at Garrett in that Labor Day photo. Brooke squeezed my hand and said, "Then let's move on. Together." And that's exactly what we did. The next few months were brutal in a way I didn't expect. See, when you cut off your family, people act like you've committed a crime. Mutual friends start asking questions. Extended relatives send you texts that say things like, "Life is short," and "family is everything," which is easy to say when your family didn't accidentally confess they wish you were never born over a casual barbecue. Uncle Dale reached out once. Just once. He sent me a text that said, "Your dad loves you, Nolan. He's just not great at showing it." I read that text about 15 times trying to figure out if Dale knew about the voice message. If he was on the other end of that call. If my dad said, "I wish Nolan never happened," and Dale just laughed along, and then they went back to flipping burgers like they were discussing the weather forecast. I never responded to Dale. What was I supposed to say? Thanks, Dale. Does he also wish I never happened while showing that love he's so bad at expressing? Work became my lifeboat. I threw myself into my job at the logistics company with the intensity of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. My boss, a sharp woman named Patricia, noticed the shift. She pulled me aside one afternoon and said, "I don't know what's going on in your personal life, but whatever fuel you're running on, it's working. I'm putting you up for the regional operations lead position." I got the promotion. It came with a 30% raise and the responsibility of overseeing distribution across 3 states. I was 29 years old, making more money than my dad had ever made in his best year, and there was nobody to call and tell. No Sunday phone call. "No, that's great," Bud in a flat voice. Just me and Brooke in our apartment, eating takeout Thai food and toasting with cheap champagne while she told me how proud she was. And honestly, her being proud was enough. More than enough. Brooke had this way of looking at me that made me feel like I was the most important person in any room. And after a lifetime of feeling invisible in my own family, that meant everything. We moved into a house in Franklin, just south of Nashville. Nothing huge, a 3-bedroom ranch with a big backyard and a porch that wrapped around the front. Brooke started a vegetable garden. I built a fire pit out of stones I hauled from a landscaping supply store on a Saturday. We adopted a dog, a goofy black lab mix named Biscuit who had no concept of personal space and thought every piece of furniture was his bed. For the first time in my life, I had a home that actually felt like one. But the emotional work was harder than the career stuff. I started seeing a therapist, a guy named Dr. Ellison who had a calm voice in an office that smelled like cedar. I told him about the voice message, about the years of favoritism, about the numbness that had settled into my chest like concrete. He didn't flinch. He just nodded and said, "Nolan, you're grieving a father you never actually had. The one you wanted him to be doesn't exist, and that's a loss that's just as real as any other." That hit me harder than the voice message did. Dr. Ellison helped me understand that I'd spent my whole life auditioning for a role I was never going to get. The appreciated son, the one who gets noticed. I kept doing take after take, hoping the director would finally say, "That's the one." And instead, he just kept looking past me at Garrett. The voice message wasn't the wound. It was the diagnosis. The wound had been there for decades. I started building a life that didn't orbit around my family's approval. I reconnected with old friends from college. I made new ones through work. There was a guy named Trent on my operations team who became one of my closest friends. He was this loud, funny former Marine from Memphis who had his own complicated family history and understood what it meant to build something from nothing. We'd grab beers after work on Fridays and talk about everything, real stuff, not surface-level garbage. It felt like having a brother who actually saw me. Brooke and I got engaged in November. I proposed on our porch with Biscuit sitting between us, completely oblivious to the moment, chewing on a stick. She said yes before I even finished the question. We decided on a small wedding. 30 people, tops. A vineyard outside of Franklin. No family on my side. I didn't want the anxiety of wondering if my dad would show up and ruin it with his carefully curated indifference. And I definitely didn't want to give him the chance to stand up at a reception and deliver some hollow toast about being proud of his son when we both knew he wished I hadn't been born. Brooke's family stepped in to fill the gap. Her parents, Jim and Connie, treated me like I was their own from day one. Jim was a retired electrician who loved fishing and bad puns, and Connie was the kind of mom who called to check on you after a rainstorm just to make sure you didn't have any leaks. They didn't replace what I lost, but they showed me what it was supposed to look like, and that gave me something to build toward. By the time spring rolled around, I was in a different place entirely, literally and emotionally. I'd been headhunted by a larger logistics firm based out of Nashville proper, offered a director-level position with equity and a salary that made my eyes water. I took it. Brooke and I were deep into wedding planning. Biscuit had graduated from chewing sticks to chewing shoes, which we considered progress. Life was good. Not perfect. Not free from the occasional 3 a.m. spiral where I'd lie awake and wonder if my dad ever thought about what he said, but good. Solid. Mine. And then the phone call came. It was Garrett. I hadn't spoken to him in almost a year. I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut told me to pick up. "Nolan," he said, and his voice was different. Serious. No casual bro energy. No dude or man peppered in for flavor. Just my name, flat and heavy. Yeah, I said. Dad's business is in trouble. Like, real trouble. He took out a loan to expand into commercial work last year, and the project fell through. The client pulled out, the subcontractors are suing, and Dad owes the bank somewhere around $350,000. He might lose the house. I stood in my kitchen, looking out at the backyard where Biscuit was rolling in the grass, and I felt absolutely nothing. No panic, no sympathy, no rush of concern. Just a vast, empty calm, like standing in the middle of a frozen lake. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Garrett paused. Because he's too proud to ask, but he needs help. And you're doing well, Nolan. Mom told me about the new job. We're all really proud of you. We're all really proud of you. There it was. The words I'd waited my entire life to hear, served up on a silver platter now that they needed something from me. I almost laughed. I might have, actually. A small, quiet, broken kind of laugh that I covered by clearing my throat. I'll think about it, I said. Then I hung up and stood there in the kitchen for a long time, listening to Biscuit bark at a squirrel, and I thought about what Dr. Ellison had told me about grieving a father I never had. The thing is, I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. And sometimes being done is the most powerful thing you can be. After Garrett's call, I didn't do anything for 2 weeks. I just sat with it. Brooke knew something was up because I kept staring at my phone like it owed me money, but she waited until I was ready to talk about it, which is one of the 700 reasons I was marrying her. When I finally told her, she listened without interrupting, then said, "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," I said. "Yes, you do," she said. "You're just afraid of what it says about you." She was right, because what I wanted to do was nothing. I wanted to let my dad sit in the mess he'd made and feel the weight of it the way I'd felt the weight of that voice message every single day for the past year. And I felt guilty about that, because no matter what he said about me at a barbecue, he was still my father, and somewhere underneath all the scar tissue there was a kid who just wanted his dad to be proud of him. I called Dr. Ellison. We had an emergency session where I basically word vomited for 45 minutes while he nodded and took notes. At the end, he said something that stuck with me. "Nolan, you don't owe anyone your help, but you do owe yourself the truth. Whatever you decide, make sure it comes from a place of clarity, not revenge." So I got clear. I asked Trent to grab a beer with me that Friday, and I laid the whole thing out. The voice message, the estrangement, the phone call from Garrett, all of it. Trent listened the way Trent always listened, which was intensely and without judgment, like a sniper evaluating a target. When I finished, he took a long sip of his beer and said, "You know what you need to do, right?" "What?" "You need to go see your dad. Face to face. Not for him. For you. Because if you don't, you're going to spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened, and that's going to eat you alive." I knew he was right, but I also knew I wasn't going up there empty-handed. Not emotionally, anyway. I needed to be prepared. I needed to know exactly what I was walking into and exactly what I was willing to give, and more importantly, what I wasn't. So I did my homework. I called a buddy from college who worked in commercial real estate and asked him to look into my dad's situation. Turns out it was worse than Garrett described. Rick had signed a personal guarantee on the loan, which meant the bank could come after everything. The house, his equipment, his savings, whatever was left. The commercial project he'd taken on was way above his pay grade. He'd been trying to compete with bigger firms, and it backfired spectacularly. The client had pulled out due to delays, and 3 subcontractors had filed liens. My dad's business was essentially a sinking ship, and he was standing on the deck pretending the water was just a little high. I also learned something else. Garrett had co-signed on part of the loan, which meant Garrett was on the hook too. Suddenly his phone call made a lot more sense. He wasn't just calling out of brotherly concern. He was calling because his own financial future was tied to our father's failing business, and he needed someone to throw a life raft. That detail changed everything for me. Not because it made me want to help less, but because it clarified exactly what this was. It wasn't a family coming together in a crisis. It was a family that had spent decades overlooking me, suddenly realizing that the invisible son was the only one who wasn't drowning. I spent the next week preparing. I sat down with Brooke one evening at the kitchen table, and we went through our finances together. We were in good shape. Between my new salary, her income, and the savings we'd been building, we had a solid financial cushion. I wasn't going to jeopardize that. Whatever I decided to do for my father would have clear boundaries, and Brooke and I agreed on every single one before I made any moves. I also wrote a letter. Not one I planned to send, one I planned to read out loud. I wrote down everything I'd wanted to say to my dad for the past year. Everything I'd wanted to say for the past 20 years, really. About the bike versus the car. About the flat voice on Sunday calls. About the way he bragged about Garrett to anyone who would listen and described me as my other son at family events, like I was an afterthought with a pulse. About the Christmas with the laptop and the oversized sweater. About every time I achieved something and waited for the phone to ring with congratulations that never came. And about the voice message. The 9 seconds that confirmed every fear I'd ever had about where I stood in his world. I practiced reading it out loud in our bedroom while Biscuit sat on the floor looking at me with his head tilted like I was giving the worst TED talk he'd ever seen. But it helped. It helped me get the emotion out before the actual conversation so I could walk into that room clear-headed and in control. The plan was simple. I'd drive up to Clarksville on a Saturday. I'd sit down with my dad alone, not with my mom hovering and smoothing things over, not with Garrett playing mediator. Just me and Rick. I'd say what I needed to say, I'd listen to whatever he had to say back, and I'd make my decision from there. No promises in advance. No checks written before the conversation happened. If my father wanted my help, he was going to have to earn it by doing something he'd never done in his entire life. Being honest with me. Brooke drove up with me. She waited at a coffee shop in town while I went to the house. She kissed me before I got out of the car and said, "You're the strongest person I know. Whatever happens in there, I'm here." I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home and sat in the car for a minute. The house looked the same. White siding, blue shutters, the same cracked driveway my dad kept saying he'd fix every summer. My mom's garden gnomes were still lined up by the front walk like tiny, judgmental sentries. Everything was exactly as I remembered it, which made it feel even stranger that I was a completely different person than the last time I'd been there. I took a breath, grabbed my phone with the voice message still saved on it, and walked up to the front door. I didn't knock. I just stood there for a second, listening to the muffled sound of a television inside, and I thought about what Trent said. Not for him. For you. Then I knocked. The television went quiet. Footsteps. The door opened, and there was my dad. He looked older. Thinner. His hair had gone grayer around the temples, and there were dark circles under his eyes that I'd never seen before. He stared at me like he was seeing a ghost, which in a way, he was. I was the son he wished hadn't happened, standing on his porch, holding all the cards. "Hey, Dad," I said. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "Nolan, come in." I stepped inside, and the door closed behind me, and everything I'd been building toward for the past year was about to come to a head. The house smelled the same. Coffee and pine sol and that faint, dusty scent that old carpet holds on it no matter how many times you vacuum it. My mom wasn't home. I timed it that way on purpose. I knew she volunteered at the church food pantry on Saturday mornings, and I needed this conversation to happen without her in the room trying to translate my dad's feelings for him. We sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd eaten 1,000 dinners, done 1,000 homework assignments, and listened to 1,000 stories about Garrett's football games. My dad offered me coffee. I said no. He poured himself a cup with hands that weren't quite steady and sat across from me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. He looked at the table. I looked at him. Then I pulled out my phone, opened the voice message, and set it on the table between us. "Before we talk about anything else," I said, "you need to listen to this." I hit play. The sound of the barbecue filled the kitchen. The laughter, the music, the grill. Then his voice. Between us, "I wish Nolan never happened." Then the laugh. 9 seconds. The kitchen was silent. My dad's face went white. Not red, not flushed, not the defensive color of a man getting caught in a lie. White. Like every drop of blood had drained from his head and pooled somewhere around his ankles. He stared at the phone like it had just bitten him. "That was sent to me by accident," I said, keeping my voice even. "Last June. You meant to send it to Dale. You were at his place, at a barbecue. And you told your brother that you wished your own son had never been born. Then you laughed about it." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He closed it. Tried again. "Nolan, I need you to let me finish," I said, and my voice didn't waver, which surprised me. I practiced this, but practice doesn't always hold up under pressure. This time it did. "I spent my entire life trying to earn something from you that Garrett got for free. Your attention, your pride, Your respect. I watched you brag about him to anyone who would listen while you couldn't even remember what I did for a living. I paid my own way through school while you covered every penny of his. I called you every Sunday for years, and you never once asked me a follow-up question. Not once. And I told myself it was fine. I told myself you just weren't a words guy. I made 100 excuses for you because the alternative was accepting that my own dad didn't think I was worth his time. He was staring at the table now. His jaw was tight. His eyes were wet, but nothing was falling. Then I heard that message. I continued. And I stopped making excuses. Because you didn't say you were frustrated with me. You didn't say I disappointed you. You said you wished I never happened. Like I was a mistake. Like my entire existence was something you regretted. And you laughed, Dad. You laughed. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. The kitchen clock ticked on the wall above the stove. Biscuit would have hated that clock. Why? I asked. Just one word. The only word that mattered. My dad looked up at me. His eyes were red and glassy, and for the first time in my life, he looked small. Not physically, but in every other way. Like the man I'd spent 3 decades trying to impress had shrunk down to something fragile and human and deeply flawed. I don't know, he said, and his voice cracked. I don't have an answer that's going to make this right. Try, I said. He took a shaky breath. You were always so independent, Nolan. Even as a kid. You never needed me. Garrett needed me for everything, coaching, money, advice, and I guess I got used to being needed. You just handled things. You figured stuff out on your own. And I told myself that meant you were fine, that you didn't need what Garrett needed. But the truth is, he stopped, swallowed hard. The truth is I was lazy. I took the easy road. I showed up for the kid who demanded my attention, and I let the quiet one fend for himself. And somewhere along the way, the distance between us got so big that I didn't know how to cross it. So I stopped trying. And that thing I said to Dale, that was me being a coward. I was frustrated with myself, with the mess I'd made of my business, with the fact that my youngest son hadn't called in months. And instead of owning that, I blamed you. I said something horrible, and I didn't even have the guts to say it to your face. I said it behind your back, to my brother, at a barbecue, like it was nothing. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. It wasn't nothing, Nolan. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I sat with that for a long time. Not because I was deciding whether to forgive him. I'd already made that decision before I walked in. I sat with it because I wanted to feel it. Every word. I wanted to feel my father finally seeing me. Even if it took 32 years and a catastrophic financial crisis to get there. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm not giving you money today. I'm not writing a check to fix a problem that you and Garrett created together. What I am going to do is connect you with a financial advisor I trust. His name is Jordan. He works with small businesses in distress, and he's going to figure out what's salvageable. If there's a path forward that doesn't put my family at risk, I'll consider helping. But there are conditions. My dad nodded. He didn't argue. He just listened, which might have been the first time he'd ever really done that. First, you go to therapy. You deal with whatever it is that made you think it was acceptable to say that about your own son. Second, we don't sweep this under the rug. If we rebuild something, it's going to be honest. And third, you tell Garrett what you said. He needs to hear it. Not from me. From you. His face twisted at that last one. I could see the resistance, the shame, the instinct to protect the golden child from knowing their father was capable of something that ugly. But he nodded. Slowly. Like a man agreeing to surgery he knew was necessary. Okay, he said quietly. I stood up. He stood up. We looked at each other across the kitchen table, where I'd spent my whole childhood being invisible. Then he said, I never should have said that. You're the best thing I never deserved. I didn't hug him. I wasn't there yet. But I nodded and said, we'll see. I drove to the coffee shop and found Brooke in a booth with 2 lattes and a look on her face that said she'd been watching the door for an hour. I told her he cried, that he apologized, that he admitted he was a coward. She asked if I believed him. I said I believed he was scared and ashamed, and whether that turned into real change, I didn't know. But I said what I needed to say, and I wasn't carrying it anymore. We drove home to Franklin that afternoon. Biscuit greeted us at the door like we'd been gone for 6 years, which is his standard response to any absence longer than 20 minutes. I sat on the porch with a glass of sweet tea and watched the sun go down over our backyard. The fire pit I'd built, the garden she'd planted, the life we'd made together without anyone's permission or approval. My dad did go to therapy. He's been going about 8 months now. Garrett called me after my dad told him about the voice message. He was quiet for a long time, then said, "I had no idea. I'm sorry I didn't see it." I told him that was the whole point. Nobody saw it. That's how favoritism works. The favorite never notices because the system was built for them. The financial situation got sorted out, mostly. Jordan helped restructure the debt and negotiate with the subcontractors. I covered a portion of the legal fees, not because I owed it to him, but because it was the right thing to do and I could afford it without hurting us. Garrett covered his share too. For once, the weight was distributed evenly. Brooke and I got married in April at that vineyard in Franklin. 34 guests. Biscuit was the ring bearer, which went about as well as you'd expect. My dad came. He sat in the second row and cried through the whole ceremony. During the reception, he pulled me aside and said, "I'm proud of you, Nolan." I should have said that a long time ago. I looked at him and said, "Yeah, you should have." But I smiled when I said it. Because I wasn't that kid anymore, the one sitting in a hot car in a Kroger parking lot, playing a 9-second message on repeat and wondering what was wrong with him. I was a man with a wife and a dog and a house and a career and a life that I built with my own 2 hands, without his approval, without his pride, without his permission. And if he wanted to be part of it now, he was going to have to earn his seat at the table the same way I earned everything else. One day at a time.